Hello, good evening. Good evening. It's me, Dr. Catherine Toomer for Dr. Toomer Talks Show. I apologize if my voice is a little bit hoarse. I am getting over COVID, which I managed to go 5 years with not so much as a cold. And then I guess the universe felt it was time for me to feel something. But anyway, so I'll try to get through this without losing my voice completely. And but thank you for being here, and I apologize for not being here last week. So this is the time of the month when most people start giving up their New Year's resolutions. It's one of the reasons why I don't make New Year's resolutions. Um, and so before we get started, actually I'm saying hi, Val. Um, just let me know where you're listening from. Say hi. Let me know where you're listening, and then if you're listening later, put hashtag replay, and please let me know where you listen from. Even then, I am streaming live now on YouTube, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and so those are places where you can find the recordings afterwards if you miss it. So again, I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer, and I am a family medicine and community health physician. I am also a metabolic weight care specialist, and I help people maximize their health and wellness through their weight health, which basically means understanding the underlying cause of weight gain and then helping with that. As we know, weight is just a symptom of something else, and I go after the cause. And so today, since we're at the point now where everybody starts, like I said, starts dropping their resolutions, they start kind of feeling a little bit like a failure because we aren't able to sustain some things that probably weren't very sustainable to begin with. And so, what I wanted to talk about was actually how to get the most out of anything, basically any process, so that you can continue on to make the transformations that you want, but in a way that makes more sense. And so therefore you don't have to, it's not something to do or not do. It's not something that you fall off a wagon or get back on a wagon. It's just simply a matter of creating a process, of having a way of taking steps to get the transformations that you want. And it's really, and this is actually can be applied to just about anything: relationships, getting a job, losing weight, whatever it is. Um, so always this is something that can be applied, and I only doing 5 points. And so if you want to write them down, you can, or you can listen to this later and write them down. But they apply really across the board. Hello, Kwana. Thank you for joining us from Atlantic City, Marcia from Barbados, and Val from Oregon. I know there's others watching. I can't see your comments always, but thank you for joining. So when it comes to a transformational process, basically what a transformation is basically you go from point A to point B and make a change of some type that you want, preferably a positive change. And there are ways that you can do this that can apply anywhere. When you see that there's something that you don't like and you want to change it to something else, there are certain steps you can take every single time that will work. And so, first of all, be very clear. Number one, be very clear about the results you want. Be very specific about the results you want, very clear about the results you want, and be able to imagine what those results are. If you're unable to imagine it, you're unable to achieve it. So, really spend some time doing the mental work to really think about and visualize and clarify what exactly it is that you want to happen. Because that is going to be, it's going to be very important to understand what you want in order to measure as to whether you're actually getting there, whether you're actually successfully on making steps to get there. And so it does provide clear direction and clear motivation when you know exactly what you want. Not vague. I want to feel better is too vague. Be very specific. I want to be able to walk upstairs without getting out of breath. I want to be able to interact with people at work without feeling inadequate or getting into an argument. I want to be able to, sit down and focus well enough and read through a book without getting distracted. I want to go a whole day without watching television. Whatever it is, be very specific about what it is, whatever goal it is that you want. And then number 2, identify your starting point. Know where you are now. Understand who you and where you are right now. Know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what assets you have that can help propel you to the vision that you want. If you, and also what you don't have. So, for example, I want to open a store. Do you have capital? Do you know what you want to sell? Do you have those items? Do you have the time? Do you have the resources? So think about what you have in terms of your habits, in terms of your personality, in terms of all the things that can help you achieve that goal and anything that might be in the way of achieving that goal. You have to understand this because otherwise you can't track your progress. And if you see me looking down, it's because I wrote notes. Like I said, I'm recovering, so I want to make sure I don't forget everything. So make sure that you know what your starting point is, so that way you can tell how far you've gone in your progress. Number 3, commit to the growth. You have to be emotionally, mentally, physically available in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve. You can do this by creating a mantra of some type of affirmation that you can tell yourself every single day to remind yourself that this is the vision, this is the goal, this is what it is that you want. Like I said, this can apply to anything, anywhere. Val says, I want to be like Ernestine Shepherd at 87. If I recall, that's the woman who is very, very fit, is very muscular. She actually became a bodybuilder. She started becoming a bodybuilder in her late 60s, if I recall. So, yeah, that's a good goal. I'm actually right there with you. So, and then I just want to say hello to Perry Johnson, from Dallas, Texas. So commit to the growth. It really, any type of transformation requires consistency and it requires some effort. And so when you commit your time, your effort, your energy, your physical, your psychological, your emotional well-being to the goal, then it helps achieve it because it becomes important. And then number 4 is create a support system. It's really important to surround yourself with people who can hold you accountable, that will help you achieve your goal and not try to keep you from your goal. It's also good to be around people who have already achieved what it is that you want. If you're around someone, so for example, if you want to have a particular type of relationship, then you seek out those people who have the relationship that you admire or that you want. If you want a particular job, you look for people who are already in that job and you surround yourself with those people who understand the steps of how to get there and they can mentor you. But if you're around people who you really you'll only go as far as the people that you surround yourself with. And so if there's a transformation that you want, it's really important to surround yourself with people who are as dedicated to that transformation as you are. And then number 5 is to embrace the growth mindset. If you tell yourself you can do it, you can. If you tell yourself you can't do it, then you won't. And so it's really important then to keep telling yourself that you can. When it comes to transformation, things are going to change. And it's really important to be adaptable and be open-minded when those changes happen. If you try to keep things exactly the way they are, then that transformation is not going to happen. And so I think I wrote down here, oh, flexibility. That's what I wrote. Um, so it's really important to be adaptable and flexible. And so um, I'm just going to go through them one at a time. I try to keep things down to like 1 through 5, just because, to keep the time short, and because I was afraid I was going to lose my voice. So I didn't want to do too many. So again, number one, clarify your vision and your goals. Number two, identify your starting point so that you can measure when you've achieve something, so that you can measure when you're having some success. Number three, commit to the growth, because it's consistency that matters. Number four, surround yourself with people who are like minded. So have a good support system. And then number five, embrace flexibility and adaptability as you start to move forward. This can be applied again to anything and to anywhere. And this is actually what I apply to most things that I do. Um, and and again, it can be relationships, it can be weight loss, it can be getting a new job, it can be getting healthier in some other way. Um, it can be getting organized, or um, cleaning a room and keeping it clean, that sort of thing. There's always some way that you can create a transformation that you want, no matter how big, no matter how small. It just needs to be something that you have envisioned, and then you take the necessary steps to do it. And so, excuse me. Um, Marcia says, very sound and sensible points that guarantee to make you win. And that's ultimately what it is. And recognizing those wins. So when you do something and there's any change, it's important then to recognize those changes for what they are, not based on how much they are, but just that they are. So I often hear this very often with people. I haven't really lost very much weight. And then when I talk to them, I find out, yes, they have lost some. And if that's your goal, then even some is a win. Sometimes it's winning just by not gaining weight. And it's just really a matter of mindset and how you view what it is that you're doing and what it is that has happened. And so I know this was relatively quick. I didn't want to strain my voice and get myself into a pickle while I was doing this. So if you have any questions, please ask me them now. And it can be about anything: health, wellness, weight care. Um, and because I know I talk a lot lately, I've been talking a lot about GLP-1 medications. And before we continue, I do want to say that um, I have founded a group, Your Light Wellness and Weight Care, and we're a telehealth weight care practice that primarily uses compounded medications to help people gain access who have lost access to their GLP-1 medications, like their Wegovy and their Zepbound and Trulicity and the like. And so we are now 42 doctors. We're covering most states. I think we're in 44 states now, and including Washington, D.C. And so anyone who who is losing access to their medication or is considering using a GLP-1, you can have them contact me through my website, drtoomer.com, and then I can direct them from there to a doctor in their state with a license who can then help them. And because I know as of January 1st, a lot of people have lost access to their medicine, and their companies have dropped GLP-1s from their formularies, and there are alternatives. And I know that there's some concern about the FDA determining that there's not a shortage. And for those of you who understand, when the FDA says that there's not a shortage, then compounded medications are no longer legal. So, but as of today, the FDA said that they're not going to enforce anything because there are lawsuits in place. And so we're not really concerned. We don't think that it's going to end, because we know there is still a shortage, for one thing. So, so if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Or you can send them to me in my email at help@drtoomer.com. You can find me on Facebook, in my Facebook group, um, or you can just join me next Tuesday for my Dr. Toomer Talks show. Um, so Leah Brown says, thanks so much for these steps. I'm trying to help my sister whose diabetes is out of control. Well, first of all, she has to want it to be controlled. It's really hard to make somebody else do something. And one of the problems we run into with diabetes is when your diabetes is out of control, it actually affects your mood, it affects your motivation, it affects your ability to process information. So it's like this double-edged sword. It's really, really hard to get motivated when you have the one thing that you need to motivate you is your brain, and your brain is being hijacked by a metabolic system or chronic metabolic process. So the best thing to do when it comes to um, helping someone with diabetes is, one, don't enable them. If you don't bake cookies, don't keep things around that they eat and cannot resist. When you have the opportunity to cook for them, make sure that it's meals that are very protein forward, high in fiber, and don't nag. When somebody's doing something that goes against what they're supposed to be doing or what we think they're supposed to be doing, nagging them about what they're doing really just makes it worse. It sends them into a psychological state where they give up. And so it's easier just to provide support, provide options, good options, and then let them decide where they're going to go next. When it comes to diabetes, however, GLP-1 medications like Ozempic and Mounjaro and Trulicity are really, really good at getting diabetes under control. They are the best at getting diabetes under control. And so if that's an option, then that is a really, really good option. And it should be someone who understands how to prescribe it so that they get to the right dose. And you start off low, go slow, but then you increase over time. And then you keep checking for A1Cs every 3 months. Diabetes can be controlled. I'm a perfect example of that. I was very much out of control. Now I'm very much in control and have been now for almost 20 years. So it's possible. So what is your advice to break a plateau? So it depends on what the plateau is, where you are, and why. So a lot of times what a plateau is your body's way of telling you that it likes where it is. It's one of the reasons why I don't really subscribe to goal weights, because what we decide we want our body to be and what our body decides it wants to be can be two totally different things. The other thing that really I find that makes people stop losing weight is they drop their calories too low. When the brain thinks you're starving, it stops weight loss. So eating more. It sounds counterintuitive, but it works. The other is making sure that when eating, there's enough protein involved, there's enough fluid involved, and enough fiber. And then the other is making sure all the other aspects of the pillars of weight, making sure you're getting enough sleep, keeping your stress levels down, and building muscle. Muscle is the best plateau breaker, because what it does is that it puts you in a much better metabolic state. And weight gain and weight loss are metabolic processes. So you want to make sure that your metabolic state is as optimal as possible, and muscle is the way to do that. I hope that answers your question. Oh, Marsha, your thoroughness needs no questions. Well, thank you. Val said, I'm on Mounjaro, 15 milligrams, 6 weeks, same weight within 0.5 to 1. It could very well be that that's where your body likes to be. The other is that, again, like I said, it could be too low of calories. It could be muscle, not enough muscle. Depending on where you are in terms of age, it could be menopause related. So you may be, being pushed a little bit farther away from metabolic stability. It really just depends. But especially if you're starting to get close to what is considered quote unquote a normal BMI. BMI is just a suggestion. The closer you get to what is a healthy weight, then your body may just like being there. I mean, that's just if your energy's high, you're sleeping well, you feel strong, it may just be where your body likes to sit. And then sometimes your body will plateau just to reset. Weight loss is never linear. It always kind of goes up and down, pauses, up and down, goes up and so it could just be that your body's just resetting and getting used to its new normal before it does anything else. Um, Thank you for saying that about plateaus in regards to protein and muscle. For so many years, it was always the scales and weight. Yeah, it's really not. It's more about your health. And when you're healthy, your body goes where it goes. There is no such thing as an ideal weight. Um, we have to change our mindset. Absolutely. The a lot of diet culture, a lot of what we talk about with weight loss is self-imposed and it is false. A lot of it is based on blaming and shaming ourselves into thinking that we haven't done something or doing something wrong. When really what it is that we have a metabolic process that's happening and all of our behavior should be towards controlling that process. Every single person is different. There is a huge genetic component. It's the same reason why you can have two people in the exact same family. They eat exactly the same way, yet their body responds to food in two different ways. Or you have two other people who, can exercise exactly the same, and one person responds and one person doesn't. And age makes a difference. What you do building muscle at 20 is much, much easier than building muscle at 40. The amount of work it takes to build that muscle at 20 is a lot less than what it takes to build that same amount of muscle when you're 40. So age does play a role because hormones play a role. And so there's a lot of different components involved. Um, Let me see. Val says, yeah, I don't believe in BMI. Went to the doctors yesterday. I'm actually fine at this weight. Well, if that's the case, then it's not a plateau. It's just a healthy state anymore. Val says, I'm healthy, strong at 65. I just quit metformin. Don't need extra medication. Well, there you go. So it's not a plateau. It's it's just you're at a good state. You're at a good place, and just enjoy it. I mean, that is the best indication of health that there is, where you can drop medication because you no longer need it. And so weight is really just a symptom. It's not the end all to be all. There are a lot of other ways of measuring one's health. And, being able to drop a medication is definitely one of them. Congratulations. Well done. Any other questions or comments? Menopausal weight gain seems like an upward battle, mainly because the reason it feels like an upward battle is because most of the time we don't go after the cause. So, what happens with menopausal weight gain is your estrogen drops, your progesterone drops, but also your testosterone drops. So, testosterone is what helps us maintain our muscle. Our muscle is what helps us maintain our metabolic state. So, when our testosterone drops, it's harder for us to use that to create that one powerhouse that keeps our metabolic status healthy. When our estrogen and progesterone drops, it leaves our cortisol unopposed. And our cortisol is what pushes us towards insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is what makes our body make fat. So you have three things going on at one time that are pushing us towards weight gain. And therefore, the only way to reverse that weight gain is to replace the hormones and to build muscle. And really, that's it. And therefore, that's why GLP-1s are so effective, because it blocks that insulin resistance. The other is hormone replacement is so effective because it stops the continuation of the weight gain. And then testosterone replacement because it helps us build muscle and then improve our metabolic status. It is seemed like an uphill battle. But the way you treat menopausal weight gain is the same way you treat diabetes, because it's basically on the same continuum. What is your opinion on TRT in women? I love it. When you say TRT, are we talking about testosterone? I'm not sure what you mean by that acronym. Does the lack of estrogen affect the nerves in any way? It can, mainly because, again, estrogen drops, cortisol is left unopposed. Unopposed cortisol affects our blood sugars. When our blood sugars are all over the place, our nerves get affected. Blood sugar attaches itself to nerves and small blood vessels. So you end up with tingling and numbness. It's part of the reason why, diabetics lose sensation of their fingers and toes. And also affects our eyesight. So your optic nerve gets affected. It affects your brain. So dementia becomes more common and it can progress. And um, so yes, estrogen does affect nerves. The other thing, though, that affects nerves is B12 deficiency can do that as well. So if you're not a big meat eater, then you should supplement with B12. Is there a medication that treats all three at the same time? Meaning treats all three what? Hormones? Testosterone um, is a fat soluble muscle injection, and you can do topical with skin. There is a combat patch, which is a combination of progesterone and estrogen. I'm not aware of any medication that puts all three together. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any. I use testosterone, estradiol, and progesterone, T-shots, estradiol patches, and oral progesterone. Yeah, that's a perfect combination. Perfect combination. And take advantage of that. Well, that's just probably why your weight has just kind of stabilized and you feel great. Now just build muscle as you can. Pilates is a really good way of doing this. Pilates is also a good way of dropping your cortisol as well. Pilates is one of those things where it builds muscle, drops cortisol, and creates a community. So for accountability. So one of those steps when I'm talking about is create a support system. Pilates classes, taking classes is a really good way of creating a support system around exercise. Um, Okay, thyroid as well. Yeah, I mean, if you're has to be husband too. Yes, testosterone is definitely makes husbands happy because it does affect our libido very much. The other is that, and this is something also that a lot of people don't talk about, but is very much prevalent. As women get older and as we lose estrogen and we lose progesterone, our vaginal lining becomes very, very thin and very fragile and very painful. So sex can become very painful if it's not addressed. And the only way to address it is by replacement. Lubrication can help up to a certain point, but the bottom line is that you go after the cause. And if the cause is from a drop of hormones, then you replace the hormones. Isabel, thank you for sharing this information. Well, thank you for listening and thank you for being here. Any other questions? Well, if no more questions, one of the things that has come up, it comes up a lot in menopause. I think next week we're going to talk a little more about menopause, and in terms of all the psychosocial things that can happen with menopause. Biology stuff is relatively easy. It's easy to look up. It's easy to find. It's easy to treat. But the psychosocial stuff, the way it affects our relationships, the way it affects us, the way it affects our well-being and the way we see ourselves is really important. And I think I'll talk about that next week because, and in case I forget, somebody remind me. But I'm. It's a very important topic, and so we'll talk about it again. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad my voice didn't go out. And so if you have questions, remember you can send them to me at help@drtoomer.com. You can also put comments in YouTube. I do see them and I check them and I answer them. And but those are the two best ways. And He said, "Thank you for explaining this in such an easy way for me and us to understand." You're welcome. I really do like educating, so if there's any topic you want to talk about, please just let me know and I'll talk about it. Okay. Also, I will be talking about how to reverse diabetes because that came up again today, and because it's also what I've done for myself. So we'll talk about that's going to come up in the next couple of weeks or so. So thank you for coming. Dr. Toomer Talk Show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and I hope to see you again next week. Good night. Oops.